Hi, my name is John Polizzi, and I'll be reading excerpts from my translation of Sharon Dodua Otoo's 2021 debut novel, Raum. Raum. It has been an incredibly humbling privilege to work with and translate for Sharon Otoo, and I would like to begin by extending my gratitude to both Sharon and the people at Fischer Verlag for facilitating this cooperation. As a scholar of German literature, a German language learner, and someone who myself grew up in a multicultural household, the descendant of Korean, Jewish, and Italian immigrants, I am painfully aware of the tremendous layerings of history and meaning which inform the languages we speak and the diction we employ. Translation always feels like an unfinished process, an ongoing negotiation of positionality and privilege, because it is a fundamentally political act, capable of erecting both bridges and walls. To aspire to speak for another human being, to carry over complex, poetic voices from one language to another, requires a combined precision and humility, which we as translators strive for, but which often seems to float on the horizon, forever just beyond our grasp. A novel like Raum provides its own unique challenges for the translator, not least because its style, content, and voice vary so dramatically across the more than 500 years and transatlantic journeys of the interwoven narratives contained within its bindings. It is as challenging as it is rewarding as well because of the very multilingual nature of the work itself, complemented by Sharon's own positionalities as a female, Black, British author of Ghanaian descent, writing in German, but also inhabiting an English which is both foreign and familiar to my own. The intersection of our languages has proven constructive not due to chance overlaps in our biographies, but despite them, because the stories her novel tells contain what literary scholars might wince at calling universal truths, yet which readers worldwide will recognize as such. A story in which we lose ourselves and find ourselves, but do not emerge unchanged. The sample English translation is indebted to Sharon's generosity in helping me fine-tune my language for the novel's chorus of competing voices. I offer this reading in token of our solidarity, from Oakland to Berlin, from one diasporic wanderer between languages to another. Ada hadn't stirred from her seat. The storm rain pelted against her eyes, her chin, her cheeks, but she remained seated next to her son. Soon he will be completely free, she thought. The pearls of her bracelet would protect him on his final journey, yet she labored to tie it around him, the cloth clinging to his body like a second skin, and as Guillerme, hope in his heart, signaled to her with a few hand gestures that he could lift the child in order to ease her task, she nodded. And as Guillerme, corpse in his arms, signaled to her with a few movements of his head and shoulders that he knew a good final resting place, she nodded again, grateful that Ata na Niomo, or whosoever, had sent Guillerme to her. Perhaps it was relief I felt as Ada struggled to her feet, relief because my work for this part of the story had been done. Ada stumbled along behind Guillerme, and he carried her treasure away from the hut. And the toothless ones were not alone among the living to observe this strange scenario from a rain-sheltered hiding place. Stratford-le-Bow, March 1848. Incarnating the head of a lion was no easy feat for me, for I had never been a living being. It neither helped that I was cast in brass, nor that I bore a heavy ring in my proud jaws. I'd never wanted to be an animal, much less approximate the appearance of one. In 1848, the shape of a lion's head had been selected to adorn the door knocker at 37 Battersea Road. It was meant to exude certain attributes like fortitude, protection, and strength. Things I knew nothing about. Once again, the object I became had been determined without my consent. I hadn't yet begun to question this customary procedure. My opportunities for influencing events were limited to daily contact with refined house guests. Those with riding gloves often had no chance at all and thought I was defective. Those with fingerless embroidered gloves of silk had to knock many times before attracting the attention of the exhausted chambermaid. This was amusing, but also trying over time, and I longed to be an ineloquent broom once more. From my perch at the entryway, I commanded an admirable view of Charles' angry departure. And not I alone. It may have appeared so to outsiders, but it was no coincidence that Ada's husband had arrived mere seconds before on Battersea Road. He tarried a few moments by the corner of number 37 long after his rival had vanished in the fog, and presently he no longer felt weary. His hunger had evaporated too, along with his heretofore urgent need to locate the next gutter or tree. The recent chain of events had simply gone too far. He had seen Dickens. Naturally, scuttling after the scoundrel would have been below the bearing of Lord William King. He would not confront him, no, the time for friendly exchange had passed. He would not imprecate him. It was even too late to slap him across the face with a glove, a lovely fantasy which, for a moment, brought a smile to William's lips. He fingered the pistol in his coat pocket. Communications concerning his wife's behavior had reached him in Paris, including word that she was entertaining an uncautionable friendship with a novelist. Had this remained at just one or two whispered commentaries, he could have dismissed it as simply more Ada hearsay. He could, at his next convenience, have taken the knave aside and advised him to take care that no further rumors of the kind proliferated. But it was clearly too late for a civilized solution. He had seen the rascal with his own eyes. I was impressed that William could retain such composure. He said only, "Where is your bracelet, Ada?" In this way, we arrived at the matter without delay, and I was grateful, because the storm had already announced itself with the first drops of rain. Of course, in 1848, Ada possessed any number of bracelets. Luckily, it was not in her nature to stall for time with unnecessary questions. She knew he meant his wedding gift to her, an exquisite trinket made of pearls which exuded a splendid, rare, white golden hue, a bracelet he had inherited from his mother. According to tradition, she had received it from her husband, William's father, on their wedding day. And William knew that Ada knew that he knew. She hadn't the foggiest idea where the precious bracelet could be. Kornstein by Nordhausen, March 1945. At first, there were no designated rooms in the Sonderbaracke, the so-called special barrack. Everything in or around the Dora labor camp was quantified, measured, and recorded seamlessly. From the outside, it was all but indistinguishable from the other wooden huts in the bleak compound, 10.5 meters wide, 23.75 meters long, one story. The Tommies would have deemed it unaccommodating. The building would have been entirely inconspicuous had it not been for the flowers in the windows. Its residents were hesitant to describe their lodgings as the special barrack. And although Ada would have had a far more fitting designation for the place, she called it the Gates of Hell, they all eventually agreed, inspired by the administrative number, on simply calling it 37. When they'd arrived, they had still been women then, each had been allocated a 6-digit number. This was even sewn into their underwear, and it was not to be altered for the length of their internment. Clothing, haircuts, meals, breaks, positions, everything had been determined and mandated by the camp commander. Everything but the designation of rooms. Ada often wound up in the last room to the left at the end of the hall, where, if she opened her eyes at the right time, the evening twilight took on a particularly lovely sheen. She found herself there so often that it came to be known as Ada's room. And of all things, I was this room. Friederike Lindauer, or Linda, Little Bear to Ada, and 972621 for the records, was one of 8, they had still been women then, selected in March 1945 for pleasurable use by the innumerable prisoners. Still, it's better here than at Ravensbrück, had been the unanimous assessment. At any rate, the food was better at 37. They had warmer clothes, and there was at least the possibility of washing oneself. Upon her arrival in Dora, Linda had become involved with a thin-lipped, bald-headed prisoner for no other reason than because he too, in a manner of speaking, came from Göttingen. His name was Waldemar. He had been toiling in the crematorium since the beginning of the year, and he smelled as atrocious as he looked. He used every resource at his disposal in order to win her for himself alone, because he could. His delicate position within the camp hierarchy allowed him, shall we say, certain privileges. Between making lewd comments and shoving his tongue down her throat, Walde assured Linda that he would personally ensure that she was taken good care of in the special barrack. He sneered after she had repeated the word good doubtfully, the gaps in his teeth underscoring the dereliction of his haggard face. 37 was, without a doubt, less horrid than the 3 days in the Ravensbrück standing cell, but the best that Linda could say of the place where she now found herself was far from good. Very, very far. Nevertheless, she tolerated this questionable deal with him in order to maintain even a chance of surviving the hell that was Dora. She rejoiced over his countless small gifts. She satisfied him with her hand or mouth as required, and remained otherwise aloof from his usual misdeeds. One day, Walde bestowed her with an exceptional bracelet. They were in the room directly next to me when she received it. Thank you.